we thought that this could be sort of a teaser to this advisory body could listen and hear about some of the things that are offered. See if you think it makes sense for us to provide offerings to a wider audience in the region. And of course, there's some similar, I think there's going to be some overlap with some of the things that John Condos does, and maybe that'll come up as well. But that's the context here, to kind of hear more about what their offerings are, and then we're looking for feedback from you whether we should be have a concerted effort at bringing this to a larger, to all the communities in the region, Southwest region, letting them know about this opportunity. Thank you.
No, that's a great introduction. And right, so ICMA has two different programs that we run from funded by the Department of Energy that are solar related. We have a whole variety of other things that we run, but so SolSmart is the larger umbrella that covers all things kind of solar electric, not outside of that, but and then solar at scale really is specific to those large scale solar installations. Can you see my screen? You can see my slides?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Okay. Excellent. So I'll try to run through this kind of at a good clip, so we have plenty of time for questions or discussion. And again, yeah, would love to hear, is there interest? What else could we do? What else would you like to learn? That sort of thing. So have to give you the disclaimer because we are funded by the Department of Energy and they require it. So while this is funded by the Department of Energy, nothing I say represents DOE, and any opinion I give is my own. So with that, so SolSmart. SolSmart is a national program with two kind of big pieces. It's a designation program and it's a technical assistance program, again, at the national level. The program has existed since 2016, and in that time has served more than 450 local governments that have been taking action to make it faster, easier, and more affordable to go solar for their residents, for their businesses. We just essentially received the go-ahead for 5 more years of the program. So again, it's been around since 2016. But we now know it will continue to be around until 2027. So excited about that, and are basically doing additional outreach and meetings like this to get the word out that for the next 5 years we'll be able to continue to run the program. I say it's a designation program. So what that means is that communities get recognition. So in that previous picture, folks holding their plaque, you get recognition for the actions that you take. We have 4 different levels of designation, and basically with each additional amount of work that you do, you get a higher level of recognition. So those are bronze, silver, gold, and platinum levels. Bronze designees basically work to increase the transparency and how they'll permit and inspect solar systems. They work on their zoning. They get a zoning review done by our organization, and are able to understand where they have potential barriers to solar and what kinds of actions they can take. These build on each other. So in addition to those actions, a silver community would have also taken additional action to train folks like their building and zoning staff, and to implement some of those practices that were identified as issues in their zoning. A gold level designee has achieved a 3-day permitting turnaround. That's one of the things we consider to be a national best practice. And they've also, again, taken some additional actions to really confirm that there's no barriers to solar in their zoning. And then platinum designees, and this is a new level we just released, so we don't actually have any yet, but they actually achieve an instant permitting, and there's online platforms for doing that. They are closely tracking metrics related to their progress on solar, and they're partnering with organizations in their community to really make sure that they're reaching everyone in the community and doing a lot more on outreach, education, and engagement. So SolSmart starts with a set of required things that everybody does, things we call prerequisites. There's a handful of those, and I'll talk a little bit more about them. But beyond that, it's really a choose your own adventure program. We've identified a whole range of practices, and depending on what the goals are of your community, you can choose which of these you want to work on. So some folks are really interested in residential solar. Maybe they want to run a Solarize program, something like that, and those are the credits that they go after. Others are really focused on a municipal goal. Maybe they want to receive or achieve 100% renewable energy for their own use, and they're more focused on their municipal goals, while others might be focused on other aspects of market development and doing more workforce training or something like that. So the way that you get to the points beyond those prerequisites really can be driven by the goals of the community. And there's a whole set of actions that, again, is a choose your own adventure style to work through. SWRPC team. So the program is administered by a pretty big team of organizations. Led by IREC, which is the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, and ICMA, which is the organization I work for, the International City and County Managers Association. So we're supported by a number of different organizations with deep expertise in renewable energy and in all of these various aspects of solar, from the community engagement to best practices, again, in zoning and permitting, inspection, and various aspects of the technologies. I am not going to spend a lot of time talking about the benefits of solar. We're finding increasingly folks are pretty well versed in these and have heard about the benefits of solar from other presentations. But I will talk about what I'm seeing as some of the things that are bringing communities to the program as some of the benefits that seem most interesting to folks. One is that solar supports local climate and sustainability goals. So we see a lot of communities who have set their own goals, whether that's a renewable energy goal or again, a climate greenhouse gas related goal, or even an air quality goal. And they're coming to the program, because solar is really consistent with meeting those local goals. We see a lot of folks who are really interested in how to generate more local, clean, and reliable power. And within the SolSmart program, we definitely have actions related to energy storage and energy resilience. So that's definitely an area that we work. We see a lot of communities come with a real interest in creating local jobs and the economic benefits of attracting solar companies to their region, to their community, as well as an increasing awareness that a lot of corporations want to locate in communities with high amounts of renewable energy. And so from an economic development perspective, as more corporations have climate goals, they're actually factoring that into where they locate certain facilities. And then last but certainly not least, a lot of the interest is coming from a desire to reduce utility bills and have price stability, particularly as energy prices have been so volatile. I think a lot of folks are looking at solar as, with a real interest in getting to price stability. So again, there's a lot of presentations, a lot of materials on solsmart.org about the benefits of solar and why solar. But I'll stay high level and leave it there. Really core to our work is a belief that local government action is really important to creating a strong solar market and driving down costs. So 65% of the cost of a solar electric system or PV is not related to the hardware. So these are considered soft costs, things like marketing and customer acquisition and permitting and financing costs. And while the cost of solar overall has come down a lot, almost all of that cost saving so far has been on those hardware costs. We've had great improvements in the technology, improvements in inverters and panels and things that have brought down the hard costs. These soft costs are much stickier. And it's a really important place where local governments can really help drive those costs down. So that's actions like streamlining permitting and inspection, creating really clear and transparent processes for solar developers, supporting consumer education and getting consumers ready and having some of that basic education about solar so that we can help drive down the customer acquisition costs, have more people already ready to say yes or to know the trade-offs or be well versed in some of the contract terms and things like that. As much as we can do to get people ready for solar, we can drive down those costs. Governments lead by example. The more we have systems out in the public eye that people can see, that people can ask questions, things like that is really important. Again, mostly for those educational goals. Local governments play a role in many places in group purchasing and helping drive down costs that way by pooling or aggregating consumer demand. Local governments can really help fill gaps in financing and see that there are maybe certain customer groups that are not well served by financing options, or again, help on the education side when it comes to financing. So again, help drive down costs there. So those are just some examples of how local government action can really be meaningful in changing the market. The other thing to think about is solar market is growing. We are projected to, the solar market's projected to grow by a factor of 5 over the next 10 years. But whether that growth and those benefits land in your community, I think really depends on local action. So while the market may grow nationally, are there jobs growing in your community? Are there clean energy benefits accruing in your community? I think really requires a proactive approach. So SolSmart's role in all of this, we are available to help local governments remove barriers, identify and remove barriers, and make it easier to have residents and businesses go solar. So again, everything from the consumer education to procurement and other aspects of market development. We offer no-cost technical assistance, again, funded by the Department of Energy, but of no cost to the local governments, to help communities take these actions. We are part of the Federal Justice 40 program, so we also work hard to make sure that everyone is benefiting from solar, and to think about how to serve underserved communities or historically underrepresented communities. We are very focused on those soft costs, as I mentioned, and really thinking about those opportunities to drive costs down. And lastly, again, we're a designation program. So what we're trying to do is really signify that communities are open for solar business and create a program where, as you participate, as you're announcing that you've taken these actions, you're really sending out a signal to the broader marketplace that that you are open for solar business. The practices that we suggest and work on are nationally recognized best practices. We have a committee that helps us to create and identify those. Through the program, we've developed a lot of guidance and templates, things to help local jurisdictions put those practices into place, whether that's sample language or, again, templates, things like that. And as I said earlier, so some of our actions are prerequisites while others are elective. So it is meant to allow a lot of flexibility to tailor the program to what you're trying to do, what your goals are, and that we can kind of work with those and help support those. Examples of the kinds of actions I'm talking about, again, goals around increasing transparency. So that can be posting a checklist online so everyone understands what is the requirement to get a permit. What does the developer have to do? What do they need to provide? What are those expectations? Developing a solar landing page, and when we say that, we really mean a website. But again, communicating quite clearly what are the expectations, how long is something going to take. The developers, by and large, want to understand the process. They'd like the process to be as streamlined as possible, but they really want to understand it and have that transparency so they can meet what you are asking for and get their permit as quickly as possible. We focus a lot on increasing understanding. Again, we have a number of different trainings that we offer. Some are virtual, some are in person. We focus on training, again, building, permitting staff, zoning staff, planning staff, to get everyone ready for doing more, thinking about where solar is appropriate or inappropriate. Again, how to review applications, how to do a good inspection, things like that. A lot of actions around reducing barriers. So we do find when we review zoning, there can be with intentional and unintentional barriers to solar. There are some things that are just unclear or unstated, which for a developer, again, is challenging if they don't have clarity on the process. And then there's other things, you know, solar has changed a lot. So we find that maybe 20 years ago, someone wrote a requirement for something. Is that still necessary today? Solar has changed. The systems are much more standardized, things like that. So you can often spot barriers that, again, might just be a holdover from another time, might be unintentional, things like that. And then expanding access. So again, on community engagement and making sure we are involving everyone and creating opportunities for everyone to use these technologies. The technical assistance team, like I said, has a really wide and deep number of skills. We have engineering, procurement, system design. The team does feasibility studies at various scales, whether that's for a single building or across a region, policy and market expertise, and then a lot of different ways that we can help disseminate best practices through things like webinars and written materials, things like that. I think most of you are what we would call the standard pathway. So you, I think, are mostly local government who does permitting, does inspections, things like that. So we call that our standard pathway. And it's the way that most entities get designation, but we have created 2 other routes as well. So we have what we call a modified pathway. That's for local governments that actually don't control zoning or permitting. And we know those exist in different parts of the country. Where maybe in a county government or whatnot, there's just a different entity that's dealing with permitting and zoning. So we do have that, and then we do have a pathway for regional organizations, and we've mentioned that to JB. So regional organizations can also get designated. A lot of their actions are more as a convener or educator, again recognizing they're not administering zoning or permits. And each of these pictures here is a guidebook to kind of how to navigate the program that lays out all the criteria and what the actions are that you need to take and what the various levels are and points and all of those details. So if anyone wants to get started, I definitely recommend looking at the website, looking at the program guide, but this is my email address. If anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to hear from you. There's also soulsmart.org is the website, and there's a kind of join SoulSmart button there. But I think we'll be circulating these slides. So if anybody wants to email me, wants to learn more, happy to get an email that way. And I think that is my last slide. So covered a lot of ground. I will say it's a little hard to hear folks. So I think there's microphones around the room. I don't know if there's a way to just make sure any questions kind of directed into a microphone.
Yeah, I think people just need to speak up if you could when you ask a question.
Okay. You are crystal clear, so that's great.
So Deborah, this is Mary. Thank you for that presentation. Could you speak a little bit about the technical assistance piece and how much a town could expect to receive if they participate in the program? I think that's changed over the years depending on what iteration of the SoulSmart program. So I don't know if that's changed from when Keene participated.
Yeah, happy to. And it really does vary. So for example, for that like bronze level, for sure you get the zoning review. So a expert will take a look at your zoning rules and regulations, send you a report. Says these are some issues that we spotted, or not, or everything looks great. And then again, if there's certain credits that are of real interest, we can identify the plan and how much we can offer support. So we have lately been able to do more when we work as a region. We've found that can be a really cost-effective way to offer support when we have multiple folks in a region that have a similar interest. but it really can run the gamut. So sometimes it's a webinar on a certain topic, or again, a one-on-one consultation. It's been, we have an RFP, will you take a look at it? To, again, much more in depth, like doing a feasibility study across some number of sites. So we try to tailor it as much as possible. We try to say yes as much as possible. It's probably a good idea to catch us at the front end of a 5-year program when our budget's, in very good tact. But yeah, we try to say yes as much as we can.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up? Sorry.
Mhm.
Do you ever provide, like, let's say there was a region where a bunch of communities were participating, would you consider providing like actual staff support?
So that there was a part of the program at one point that was called Soul Smart Advisors that was funded. That is not funded in this round. Yep.
Okay, it's a pretty basic question. If you had, if a community is interested in the first, like just getting a zoning review,
Mhm.
is that calling you up and hiring a contractor, or is that like applying for a grant to get that done? How does it work?
I think easier than both of those. Yeah, it's sending me an email. We would like to see a commitment to the program, which is a pretty basic letter. We have a template for it that says, we are interested in Soul Smart and interested in taking these kinds of actions. And that's kind of your ticket for entry, if you will. But from there, the next step is the zoning review. And it's done by our team. So you don't hire a consultant. You can point us in the right direction and tell us where to find your most current zoning bylaws. In some cases, if folks are kind of mid bylaw update or something like that, we can look at that too. But you point us in the right direction and then we'll send you back a report.
Thank you.
I've got a question for Mary. So we know that Keene and Peterborough have participated in this
Right.
program. Can you, Mary, and maybe with Deb's help too, talk about some of the technical assistance you received, just as an example?
Yeah, so we, the city of Keene got our zoning review done, and this was when we were one of the communities that was in the middle of updating our zoning when we decided to participate in this program. And so that was actually very helpful for us because we, in our initial plans for updating all of our land use regulations, we didn't envision doing a solar ordinance, but after going through this program, we're like, okay, well now we have this technical support, let's try to do a solar ordinance. And so they gave us the zoning review, and then they helped us look at other solar ordinances to use as a model. We drafted a solar ordinance and they reviewed it. So that was all very helpful. They helped us by reviewing drafts of permitting checklists that we put online. And trying to think back now, for that first round, we also did some staff training, which was virtual because I think it was during COVID. And then for that first round, we got bronze. And then after the land development code was adopted, we did another round of training. And because the land development code included that solar ordinance, that bumped us up to gold. So, yeah.
Got a question over here from Barbara?
Mari, who participated in that training? Is it for city staff or? Okay, so like if you're dealing with a smaller town, which has a smaller staff, I mean, the training would look differently, I would guess. And you might be training volunteers perhaps. Like most of your boards are volunteers and.
Yeah, and I will say Soul Smart really serves the gamut in terms of we have large cities that have participated and we have very, very small towns that have participated. And so we're pretty accustomed to scaling things up or down as needed.
And what kind of commitment is it for a municipality if they engage your services? I mean, right now I can see Swansea, you know, that we're reviewing a solar ordinance. I mean, so yeah, somebody who has experience, that would be great to have you do that. But I mean, what are we really engaging you for?
Yeah, so I think first of all, I'd be happy to jump on a one-on-one call and walk through it, you know, in more detail specific to you. But I would say most communities are able to get through the designation process in 2 to 4 months. It does require documentation of the steps. So we do need to you know, uphold the credibility of the program. So we don't just take folks' word for it. We, you know, ask for things like a link to an example, or you know, there's actions that require a press release, or there's actions that, again, it might be linking to an ordinance, things like the training, you self-certify that the training was taken. So we ask for a memo that says, yes, indeed, our zoning administrator took this training on this date. But I would say they're all meant to be pretty easy. And if you're going for the bronze level, you know, it's not a significant number of hours if you've already done a lot of the steps, or just working through the documentation, and we are available kind of every step of the way to help with that. You know, if you wanted to go for golds, then the commitment is higher, and the work usually is more. So somewhere in the middle, you know, I think if you look at the actions and you see if you've done any of them, if it would all be very new for you, then it would really affect how much time it takes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it can, in some cases, be, you know, compiling a good amount of documentation of things you've done. Ideally, you know, we'd like to help folks do things more than that, right? We're not just designating what you've done in the past, but hopefully actually helping you take some actions that are new and are interesting for you. But most folks are able to get through it in a couple of months, and we do everything we can to keep it as easy as possible.
Deb, I think you mentioned to me that you do help with solarized campaigns too.
Yeah, we definitely have. Yep, we have some models, and we have several team members who have done a lot on Solarize before. Mhm.
So I have a question. Sounds like everything is serving the community. Do you do, for example, a community wants to do a project, do you offer structural engineering support or other more, shall I say, environmental surveys reports? Sometimes those are required for grants.
Yeah, we don't engineer individual projects. That is a place that we draw a line. We certainly have done some kind of reviews of again, like an RFP, something like that. But we don't engineer individual projects.
Deborah, this is Mary again, could you speak more to the type of support that you could provide to a Solarize campaign? I'm just curious because I think the city of Keene and Marlboro were going to do a Solarize campaign back in 2020, and the big kickoff was March of 2020. So you can imagine how that went. You know, I think
Did something get turned off because the volume just went like really low?
Probably just speak up, Mary.
Yeah, sorry, is this better?
That's better. Yep.
Okay, so I guess where I'm going with this is how much and like what level of support do you provide to Solarize campaigns?
Yeah, I think it's something we'd want to get on a call and talk about. What's necessary, you know, what is needed, and that sort of thing. We do try to scale our support to, you know, what you need. So again, we've done things like review materials or help make a selection of contractors or provide templates. It really depends. I know that's probably not satisfying. It's not easy to just say it's X hours because it just rarely works that way.
Thank you.
So, So I have a question about what we might call anti-solar zoning. And I'm wondering if you have any insights and comments. There are regulations that have been put in some towns that restrict solar systems on roofs because of
Mhm.
ostensibly inaccessible ability to deal with fire and for other, shall we say, things they think they're afraid of that solar will do.
Yep.
Where do you come on that, and how can you help, resolve those kinds of, let's just say they discourage solar?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, the zoning review would highlight those things, and we find that sometimes they're unintentional and sometimes they're very intentional. We can help spotlight the issues that we see. We have a format for working through those reviews and what are the various things that we look for. An example of how we can then help. So we identify barriers, and you take a look at that. Ideally present that to a public body and say, hey, here's some things we probably want to fix. Let's say you encounter skepticism. We can, be part of a team that brings an expert to bear on that and says, actually, this is national best practice. Here's the code that supports that. Here's the evidence that supports that, things like that. Either there to actually present it or feeding information to you and helping you craft that argument. But all of our practices, we have the justification for them. So why we think some of those barriers should be removed or are not appropriate or not going to achieve your goals, things like that. I think that's probably the number one way that we've helped is really to show you or give you the support that you need to make those arguments. Is there another part of your question that I'm missing?
John, I would say what Deb said earlier is that a town needs to demonstrate a letter of commitment. So
Right.
I don't know how that would work with these communities, whether, select boards change, planning boards change, so who knows, maybe. But that might be an obstacle for that kind of community, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's right. So we are looking for a community that wants to take action to support solar and remove barriers. And that doesn't mean that everybody's excited to remove every barrier. We definitely, have folks that are excited to support solar, but there are certain barriers that are much more challenging to remove. But yeah, we are looking for that overall commitment to try to support solar within the community.
Do you help communities engage with the residents? Do you open up more communication within the entire town?
Yeah, I mean, again, we want to hear what you need and what works. We have a lot of examples, sample presentations, sample materials, things like that. We're not able to go to every single public meeting. Could we ever be at a public meeting? Yeah, if we decide that's really the top priority and would be really, really helpful. But just have to kind of understand where we can be the most helpful and what you need and how we can help.
We're in the process right now of doing a new 10-year plan. And one of the things that as a selectman, I'm trying to get the committee to explore is solar and wind. And one of the things that they're wondering is how do they reach out to the community? What is the best way for them to reach out to the community to engage response? I mean,
Right.
Some people are on social media, some people have email, some people barely get a newspaper. And trying to have people sign up so that you can communicate with them via phone or email as a group is darn near impossible because it just doesn't happen. So we're looking for other ideas on how, whether we need to hold an event or, just ways that we can engage the community so that we get more feedback as to what the town itself actually wants.
Yeah, I mean, in general, we always recommend a all of the above strategy for outreach because, as you said, everybody gets their information in different places and different means. And for most campaigns, you want people to hear it 3 different ways. You want them to see the poster at the library and read it in the newsletter or newspaper and hear it from their friend and hear the select boards talking about it, and then they'll pay attention. So, but yeah, so again, I think we're more likely to help on the strategy side, or helping provide or create materials, or link you to examples that have been successful in other places. That's something that we do a lot. Like, here's a really great example that somebody already developed and you can steal, as opposed to having everyone need to invent their own materials. But we aren't able to be at every meeting. That's
No,
sure.
no, I'm not asking for the meeting. I'm asking more for
Yeah.
ideas.
yeah.
Thank you.
Stand for dump.
Better done that.
Mary, Lisa, Joe, I'd rather somebody else get a question.
Well, I'm from one of those really tiny communities that isn't, going to make anybody a lot of money. There's only like 2,000 of us living in the whole town. But we are trying to push solar in the town. What we've done in our zoning ordinance is we've made it clear that there's no property tax involved with this. We cannot increase your property taxes if you put a solar array either on your roof or in your backyard or whatever. And but we do insist that you do fill out a permit so that we know where these panels are. And right now we charge you $25 for that permit. So that's all that comes into the town is $25. And when I'm no longer a selectman, but when I was, I wanted to waive that $25. And they said, well, there's paperwork that has to be done, and people have to be paid and all of this. So they were kind of against me, as were the other 2 selectmen.
Yeah.
My question basically is, what we're trying to do is to make the streamline the process, like you said, you could help with that. And to make it show people that the costs that people are incurring now come from like the utility company that doesn't really want to add you into the grid and give you one of those meters that runs backwards and all of that. There's usually a time that you have to wait until they can hook that up and things like that. These seems to be the things that are slowing down the residents of Valstead to get solar panels on their house. And so I was wondering if you have like methods of encouraging the utility company to like respond a little quicker or anything like that. We're looking in New Hampshire, we have this thing called community power, which is allowed now, but we're still stuck with Liberty Utilities as doing our transmission. So since they do the transmission, they own the poles and stuff, they're still going to be the ones, even if we change where we get our power from, they're still going to be the ones that are going to say, well, you got to wait until we put a meter in there and all of that. So I was wondering if you have any clues, or should this be something that I would just call you offline or send you an email about?
Yeah, so one of our actions is about utility engagement and really using the voice of the leadership in municipalities to communicate to utilities when there's an issue on behalf of their residents, to say, we're observing it takes our residents 2 weeks to hear back from you, or being the voice of that experience up to the state and to the utilities, because I do think that's an important role that local government leaders can play in reporting back what that experience is on the ground. We again can help be identifying what are those best practices and where utilities that have figured out other processes that work better or seem to be able to process things more quickly. We have experts on the team like the National Renewable Energy Lab that work with utilities day in and day out and have a good rapport with the utilities, and again have the ability to talk about utility best practices in a way that I personally can't, but we do have folks on the team that are much more conversant in that. We can't, we can't be the ones kind of taking on utilities, if you will, but can definitely help local governments understand where there are opportunities to make different points or insert different, again, best practices. I do think that one of the reasons that we are very, very interested in, where there's a regional interest is because you can bring your voices together. And so I mentioned we have a regional pathway for regional organizations. They can be a really important convener, again, to be speaking on behalf of multiple jurisdictions that are having an experience, which can be very powerful. So that's one of the actions also in the regional pathway is to, again, be engaging with the utilities, be engaging with the state, and speaking to where there are opportunities to improve those areas as well.
Thank you.
Deb, are you working with Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire?
I'm not. We actually, apart from the work with Keene and Petersburg, we haven't actually had a lot of SoulSmart activity in New Hampshire to date. So,
Are you familiar with them by any chance? It's an organization that currently has, I believe it's now 32 different communities throughout New Hampshire that are all working towards community power. I believe there's 10 communities right now that are getting ready to launch. One of the major hurdles that we're having at this point, whether it's Liberty or Eversource or Unity, is net metering. And though the legislation says they need, they being the utility companies, need to be able to provide net metering material to CCPNH, CPCNH, and make sure I got the letters right. They're not doing it, and they're really dragging their feet, and it's causing a delay as far as a number of people who have solar power being able to actually partake in the community power program. So with your permission, I would like to share your contact info with a gentleman named Henry Herndon, who is part of CPCNH. He's one of the backbones of that organization, and see if maybe the two of you having a chat may be able to come up with some ideas to prod the utilities in moving forward with their information as they're legally bound to.
Yeah, I don't know how much I'll be able to do. Again, our program is really directed at local governments.
Well, this is, you mentioned coalitions, you mentioned regional areas. This covers the state of New Hampshire. I mean, this is from the Vermont border to the seacoast, from Massachusetts to, the Lakes region of New Hampshire. So it's a large area that these towns are located, which are located.
If I can add to reinforce what you said, but the members of CBH are communities,
Yeah,
Westmoreland, et cetera. So in fact, the issue is that the utilities are not complying and they're penalizing people who have solar, who are net metered, from joining the community power opportunity that's being put forward in these communities. And they're in violation of the law, but at the end of the day, we're looking at how else, the question is how else, and can you help with bringing pressure for them to move forward and comply? Because essentially it's penalizing solar customers. They can't take advantage of the community power programs that their neighbors can because they have solar. And the reason they can is because the utility isn't complying with the law and providing the data on their interchange of power, mostly the sale of power. And so it's affecting individual communities and their citizens, but it's definitely discouraging. So in other words, someone's not going to go buy a solar system if they're thinking they're going to get into community power because, oh, well, if I buy the solar system, I can't participate in community power. So it's a distraction. It's delaying people doing things, and it penalizes those with solar already because we can't participate in community power.
and this organization represents 22% of the electrical consumers in the state.
So I'm going to jump in here because I think that Deborah and her organization are not going to be involved in that type of action in the state. And Deborah, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the SoulSmart program, having gone through it with Keene, is that they, like one of their actions, as you said, is to engage with the utility. So they would maybe work with each of the individual towns in the coalition to encourage them to reach out to the utility and engage with them, but they wouldn't necessarily be one of the partners engaging with the utility. Is that correct, Deborah?
It's correct, and we need to be really mindful. Funded by the Department of Energy, we cannot be perceived to be doing advocacy work. So I have to be very mindful of that line. And I think this organization you're describing is very steeped in advocacy work.
Yeah,
So-
my hope was that CPCNH is a conglomerate of communities, and it may actually be a way for SoulSmart to be able to touch a lot of communities with a one touch to this organization. So rather than work with 33 organizations that have to deal with 33 different committees, here it would be possible for them to do it with just one.
Maybe we focus too much on the negative problem
Right.
at metering
Right,
and not on the opportunity to work with, instead of working one community at a time, what we're suggesting is that you could work with an entity that represents right now 33, it's a growing number. So it's 33 today, it could be 50 or 100 by a year from now. And then you'd have that opportunity to reach all of those represented communities and talk about their zoning, et cetera, and maybe do it that way.
yeah,
So seeing as the fact that we're an advisory committee to Southwest Region Planning Commission, I think the Southwest Region Planning Commission still have 33
Yes.
towns.
Yeah,
I'm curious, does this group support, recommending to Southwest Region Planning Commission to the Board of Directors that they consider doing this regional pathway? And maybe, working with the 33 towns in our region?
as a board member, I do.
I'll second that.
Oh, great, yeah.
I guess I'm not clear what that would entail.
So it sounds like, and I personally, the city of Keene has gone through what she called the standard pathway, so I don't know what the regional pathway entails exactly, but it sounds like it would be, Southwest Region Planning Commission would be committing to helping convene towns and do some more like education and bringing people together around these shared issues that we have.
I guess my question about that would be whether or not SWRPC has the workforce to be able to do that. I mean, right now, you're limited in a lot of ways, things that already are out there that towns are asking for, but are not able to necessarily receive at this point because everybody's underwater. As far as the planning commission. So my question, I guess, to JB is, do you have the person power to be able to handle this at this point?
So Deb has shared information about what it takes to be a regional participant in this per program. And I've only had a little bit of time to review it. But my understanding is that it's mostly about connecting towns to them, being a convener, and so I think it's mostly a light lift.
Yeah.
It's about, and that's part of the question I was trying to ask at the beginning of this meeting was along the lines of what Mary said. Do you see a value to bringing this to the communities in the region? And if so, what kinds of technical assistance do you think our towns need or would be interested in? Or what would be a way, to gather that?
And I'm sorry, you Matt?
Matt, yeah.
You had a question?
I just had a comment. It seems that the regional approach is more about outreach and connecting.
Yeah.
And so, which is hugely valuable if they don't know about SoulStar. But it seems to me that the real value is in SoulStar doing the actual reviews of ordinances, of zoning. So, yeah, the quicker, if the regional pathway makes it quicker to get communities into the standard pathway, absolutely. That seems that would be a good way to go.
Back to you. I didn't mean to cut you
Yeah,
off.
no, I actually agree with that. That's where I'm sort of landing as well, is the fact that Each of these 33 towns has a community energy committee of some nomenclature, you know, whether it's community power or whether it's, everybody has their own name for it. And to be honest, I've been part of that, though I am not on the committee. I, as a selectman, had the committee formed, and I've been working with Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire for basically a year and a half, and I've never heard of Soul Smart. So for the Regional Planning Commission to be able to work with you and bring your information to us, I think would be a real value. Because I don't think very many folks in the area, you mentioned that very few people in New Hampshire are working with you. Keene sort of always goes its own way. You know, Keene has the size and the need, and Keene just goes forward. All of the small towns around in the county and the area hear about things, but we don't have that type of staffing, or, I mean, we're all volunteers. You know, it's like you can barely fill the number of offices within a town as it is with volunteers. So to get this moving would be, I think would be a huge benefit if you were able to work with the Regional Planning Commission, have that introduce you to a variety of other committees and towns. And one of the things, and I absolutely agree with, I'm sorry, the gentleman, Matt and John, is I'm also on the planning board, not by choice, but by decision by the state. And that would be a very great opportunity for us to have you be able to review our zoning and some of our planning board regulations and ordinances. Because one of them right now says you can't have a solar field with more than 50 panels on the ground. It doesn't matter how many panels you have on a roof, but you can't have more than 50 on the ground because of you're taking farmland. I mean, for a number of good reasons in some ways, but nonetheless very limiting in others. So long answer, yeah, I think we should do that.
Does anybody have any concerns about recommending? I mean, I know we've talked about staff effort. I will just share from my personal experience, doing the bronze level was like very little staff effort because Soul Smart did the heavy lifting of doing the zoning review. We just had to read it, and our zoning administrator had to sign and say that he read it. You know, they gave us example permitting checklists, and we just had to tweak it to be appropriate for New Hampshire because we're always pretty behind on our building codes, things like that. So it was a really light lift, and I think the more communities that start doing it, the more we'll be able to like steal from each other and adapt things from each other. So I'm not super concerned about the staff time. Does anybody have any concerns though with making that recommendation to SWRPC?
No, I don't. The only downside that I've heard in this meeting is about the residents that get the solar panels that now can't be part of it. It can't benefit from the community power thing.
Yeah.
That to me sounds like something that needs to be fixed, and probably at the state level, I don't know. But where it needs to be fixed, but somebody's got to have enough clout with the utility companies to say, no. If they want to buy power
I have to go
from
through
Quebec
another
Hydro
election
or whatever, so what?
Well, that's where CPC and HT comes in.
Yeah.
And they are working towards getting that done. But PVC isn't,
Yeah,
you know, everybody's friend either.
that's true.
And so it's interesting.
We want to take a vote on it before these two meetings.
Yeah,
We have to
Yeah.
head out, so.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to the SWRPC Board of Directors that they consider joining the Soul Smart program.
Second,
Any further discussion?
No.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous.
good program.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Sorry. let me get one.
Before, oh,
Barry, can I just,
go ahead.
so there's just joining the Soul Smart program, but I'm also interested, you can think about it, but I'm just curious if anybody, if there are specific training, that I'm thinking of the ability to bring multiple towns into a training together, so they wouldn't have to do it individually and I'm just curious if there are types of training that you think our towns really need. I'd love to hear your input if you have input.
Well, I think in our case, anybody reviewing our zoning ordinances is welcome. Because there's probably a lot of stuff in there, not to do with solar, it doesn't need to be in there. I'm aware of a lot of things that are in there that like came from the last century, and I don't mean the 20th. It's like, come on, people, how many hog farms do we have? It's like, but, the bottom line is that anybody that wants to come and review, having our zoning ordinance reviewed, I think that, I'm ready to send you an email and go for it. Have them, I mean, I gotta check with the select board, but in our case, if you do recommend changes, well, we have to wait till next March to get them actually passed. The people have to vote on that.
Right.
But, and that's where the anti-people will get up and they'll say all of the horrible things about solar and why it's a bad idea. And then I'll get up and say, well, I don't like being subservient to the Saudi Arabians. I think we should have our own power.
Yeah, it's the only argument that I've really put any type of credence to at all with solar is the fact that you're leaving by creating, I have a 12 kilowatt system on my barn. Had it for 10 years. I had a person tell me one day that because I have that 12 kilowatt system and I net meter, I'm still taking up part of the grid, even though I don't have a electric bill any longer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the sun goes down. I don't know.
And so at that point, I don't have battery backup, so I pull, and it.
Yeah,
it's
it
not-
works
I
out- it
still
works
give
out
them more
fine.
than I get, and
Yeah.
it's, but that's really the only.
Yeah, I mean, some of
What
the
type of things
arguments.
do you
Well,
hear?
that argument is dubious because the
I agree.
electrons that you produce mean that the grid doesn't get stressed to bring those to your house anymore.
Right,
Now, it's a small drop, but enough of those, and you start to reduce the load on the distribution system. So you actually are benefiting the grid. Incrementally, very small for a 12 kilowatt system, but at the scale of a dozen or 20 or 30 of
yeah,
those,
but you put 50
you are beginning to
together.
have a positive impact on the grid collectively. So you can say, well, you are, so thank you for doing that. So the argument is dubious, that argument, and yet it's one of the ones you hear.
But it's the one I hear the most.
one thing I'm hearing though is that maybe like a zoning best practices training might be helpful.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'm personally interested in, I'm curious to hear what other towns do, because I'm not actually familiar with how other towns do permitting. But in Keene, we have a building permit that people have to get. So I'm really interested in learning more about that instant permitting app that you mentioned and whether or not that would be, if it's free to use, and if so, is it just getting trained on how to use it and downloading the app and go forth? Or, so yeah, that would be of interest to me. Do other towns issue building permits? Sorry.
Nobody's like Keene. Okay, yeah. Well, but I used to, it was a whole different league to do a job in Keene than it was anywhere else. But again,
But
sorry.
yeah, I mean, to your point, when my wife and I put a new deck on the house, and I went down and I got a building permit for this. And when I was applying for it, they said, you're the first selectman to ever in the history of Alsted to get a building permit for anything. And I'm like, what?
The only honest guy.
That'll teach you.
It's like, what?
Oh, yep.
Set the bar very high there.
How about the hog farm?
Who's issuing the building permit in your town?
In our town, we have the planning board and the zoning board together are supposed to review all of the building permits. Our town clerk issues the permits. You just come into the town, or you either grab one off of the website, fill it out yourself and then bring it in. Or you can go down and bother the town clerk and she'll help you fill it out. But either way, the building permit, I mean, if you're building a house, it's $85. If you're putting up solar panels, we got it down to $25, which I think it should be free. Because the town can't make any money off of it. We don't tax it or anything. But I mean, the value of your home would go up, as a resale thing. I got 50 panels out here, I mean, that's gotta be worth something to resell a house, but the assessors are not allowed to add solar panels into your tax assessment
Yeah,
and things like that.
They do in Westmoreland.
This is not my town.
We have a zoning ordinance, the town zoning ordinance that says, no, you can't do that.
So in Westmoreland, what they do is they tax it, but then people ask for a waiver.
Yeah.
And we sign them at select board meetings, almost every single meeting, we sign
Right there
waivers
with
so
the,
that they basically get a rebate on their taxes.
I always that
based
way
on,
with the intent to cut. We have one
Yeah,
of
very
those.
similar, yeah.
We have one of those.
You have to sign.
Have to sign it.
Yeah,
But the point was we're trying to make it as streamlined as possible in Alstead already, but we'll take any advice that Deb and her people want to give us.
yeah, I thought this was a wonderful presentation. I really appreciate, the fact that SWRPC and this committee put this together because this was very educational. And
Absolutely.
I feel, I'll apologize in advance that you will hear from me. Ask Lisa.
That is my goal.
That's more of a warning, more of a threat than a warning, I guess.
No, that is my goal. And probably worth saying. So I'm in Massachusetts. I came up for the in-person workshop on solar at scale. So I'm about 45 minutes away from where you all are sitting. My background is I was a regional planner in Vermont for many years. So I have a lot of experience working with small towns and working with zoning ordinances the way you're describing. I'm kind of used to that, but really excited for your interest. I will say in terms of the regional pathway and the standard pathway, there's definitely a lot of ways to, as the region works through their actions, to make it a lot easier for each municipality to get through the program. So again, doing trainings at the regional level or creating a checklist that's a model that everybody can then use or adapt, as Mary said. So it can absolutely be that the region creates some things that then are make it easier for everyone to get into the program as well. And I think another thing that makes a lot of sense is if we do some zoning reviews for communities in the region, and then we can look at whether there's some workshop material there. If we're seeing some common issues, common challenges, common questions across a number of communities, it makes it a lot easier for us to do one workshop and take that on, as opposed to trying to do, one community at a time.
Perfect. Yeah, I think so. That'd be excellent.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. It's been really lovely to meet you all. Sorry, I'm not there in person. In retrospect, maybe I should have been, but this works well for me. So thank you.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Anybody else? Oh, you're running the meeting.
Well, I could turn it over to Joe since
I apologize, first of all, for being late. That was my fault. I got delayed coming here because some